Hi, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Tung, and I'm the Director and Head of Policy Research for the Financial Services Development Council. Today with me, I have my Vice Chairman and also the Working Group Leader of this paper entitled Trailblazing for Change, Hong Kong, the Impact Investing Hub of Asia. Besides Daniel, we also have Eric, CEO of Happiness Capital, who is also a member of our Policy Research Committee. We also have Loretta, partner of PwC Hong Kong, as well as Ms. Jean Song, Head of Philanthropy Center Asia, JP Morgan Private Bank. The reason why we are here today is obviously for the launch of our paper. This paper is really about impact investing. We feel that it is about time for us to devote more resources to sustainable investing and impact investing. FSDC has been doing quite a bit of it since 2016. There was the launch of our first paper in this regard. That's about green finance. Since then, in 2018 and 2020, we published 2 relevant papers on ESG investing. But, it's about time for us to move on to more specific and more articulated area of work, and that is really about impact investing. Now, I'm going to go through some slides that highlights our key findings and recommendations. And after that, I will ask my panelists quite a few questions. In case you have some other questions in relation to impact investing, in relation to the atmosphere environment and opportunities and such, please feel free to shoot those messages to us via the Q&A box. And please pull up the slides for us, please. Thank you. So this is really about capturing some of the opportunities we have identified, and it is really not just done by the FSDC per se. Next slide, please. It is really about how we have done quite a thorough landscape mapping. That is the literature review part, and we, on this slide, can share with you how the opportunities around the world really has gone through over the last few years. In a 5-year time span, you have seen 18% CAGR growth. Well, that is year-on-year basis, and that is really challenging for the fact that we have endured quite a bit of turbulences during those times. Now, in terms of how we can capture such impact investing opportunities here in Hong Kong, we feel that there are 2 major areas, one of which is in relation to the ASEAN market. From our attendance in our friends' conferences, such as those organized by JIN, organized by ADP, and impact investing opportunities in ASEAN countries have been soaring, over the last few years, and those numbers occurred to you or appear to you on the right-hand side of the slide would be quite convincing. Now, besides that, mainland China being the 2nd largest economy in the world and also one of those fastest growing emerging markets has quite a bit of issues to articulate and quite a bit of issues to address. And therefore, to us, that also presents quite a bit of opportunities for impact investors. Now, through our participations in the events that we just mentioned, however, quite a bit of missing parts were identified. And therefore, we feel that Hong Kong being the most open, most liberal part of the country, there's a little bit of a role for us to play. Next slide, please. Now, for us to do that, in order for Hong Kong to play a more important role as the impact investing hub, not only for China, not only for Asia, but for this part of the world, I guess there are 4 areas that we have to address. The first part is really about the perceptions of impact investing. A lot of people actually feel that is very risky. For that, it's more illiquid than the secondary market investment. A lot of people also feel that it's more long term than, and if there's any liquidity issues for the impact investors, then they can't withdraw the money. And this is something that we have to address. The other thing that we have to address is that I guess many of you who are dialing in today know a little bit of impact investing. Some of you may not know thoroughly what it is. So that's why we have a panel of experts to guide us through. Now, the third part is really how our regulatory framework or policy incentives could play a role. In terms of launching the ESG investments back in the days, or making ESG or green and sustainable investment as a primary theme of work of Hong Kong, we devoted quite a bit of resources to investor education in terms of carrot and stick and launching guidances by the exchange, the SFC, the Hong Kong MA, etc. So this, if we want to make sure that the investment community knows enough about impact investing, this is something that we have to do as well. Last but not the least, I think, to be a hub, we also need to make sure that the deals and capital would be adequate in this part of the world. And so these are the 4 key areas that we try to highlight in the paper. Next slide, please. Now, this is a summary of what I just mentioned, but in terms of how we should be doing and what we should be doing, awareness raising, capacity building, as well as incentivizing impact. And I'll go through some of those key recommendations accordingly. Next slide, please. In terms of bringing awareness to an appropriate level, we ought to tie it up, or tie it to, rather, the SDGs. The United Nations have promulgated quite for a long time about the Sustainable Development Goals, and in this report we try to highlight some of the goals that we can perhaps highlight even more. I guess our panelists would guide us through some of those goals and see how Hong Kong can play a role. The second recommendation is really to illustrate how as an asset owner or as an investor can deal with it. And to that end, I think Hong Kong government with our newly established, or rather relatively newly established Hong Kong Investment Corporation can perhaps consider some of those elements in their agenda. Next slide, please. And in terms of capacity building, there are 3 major areas. One is really to let our general investment public know about what impact investing is. Ultimately, just like other investment vehicles, perhaps the access by retail investors would be useful. But at the end of the day, if the investors by themselves don't know about it, it does not occur to us that they should be investing in it. And therefore, we should be paving the way, that is really to tell them what impact investing really is. The 4th recommendation, in our paper, is really to create some kind of partnerships. Now, as many of you would know, the Hong Kong Academy for Wealth Legacy, which is a part of the FSDC, a subsidiary of the FSDC, that was established in November last year, brings together industry experts and stakeholders, and perhaps this is one of those many parties that we can work with. Obviously, the likes of the HKSI, the HKIFA, etc., PWMA would also be relevant bodies that we could potentially work together with. The 5th part is really about teaching our students. The talent is really the most important element of our financial services industry. We have been an international financial center, not only because we have the right infrastructure, but rather because we also have the great talent. With the renowned universities here in Hong Kong, I guess many of us can let the students, the people who are coming to join our workforce in the next few years, to be a part of this and understand what impact investing really is. The last bit of our recommendations on the next slide, is really about creating a conducive environment for impact investing. Now, for these impact funds to be established in Hong Kong, there are certain elements that we can, like alleviate the cumbersome sort of sometimes perceived as cumbersome, other times perhaps considered as a fee kind of issue. Now, if we want to do it, perhaps the government can consider, taking out some of the charges, fees, etc., for them to do it. It's not for, however, for the FSDC to advocate for the lowering of barrier that Hong Kong should not be raising to the bottom in terms of regulation. But in order for us to incentivize a group of these impact investors to be based in Hong Kong, perhaps there can be something considered. Now, last but not least, I think for us to really promote investing, or impact investing rather, we can consider some other vehicles. And to that end, I think some of our existing regime under the newly introduced or reintroduced TIS scheme could be considered. And with that in mind, I think that is our highlight, the highlight of our paper. The paper should now already be online. If it isn't, my colleagues will be putting it there very soon. But the next would be really to hear from the experts. And I am going to move on to the panel discussion session. But the first question really is for my vice chairman. Daniel, you brought this very dear topic to your heart, to the FSDC last year, and we have been looking at it since. And perhaps you can tell us a little bit about the background of why you think this is very important for us to bring impact investing to the heart of Hong Kong, or heart of Hong Kong's financial offerings, and why are we doing this at this time?
Thank you, Rocky. I think the timeliness of addressing impact investing, particularly in Hong Kong, has never been better. And that's because of a confluence of 4 historic trends which lead us to the present moment where it's absolutely imperative for us to look at this. The first is growing awareness of climate change and the degradation of the environment as the major challenge facing not just Hong Kong, not just China, but humanity as a whole on this planet of ours, which is irreplaceable so far as the survivability of humankind is concerned. So the stakes cannot be higher. That kind of awareness, you could say, has been growing by leaps and bounds, but has never actually engaged the imagination and the consciousness of people living within this biosphere as today. Just looking at the volatility of weather changes, not just in Hong Kong, but throughout both the developed and the developing world throughout this summer, brings that point home to all of us. The second trend is the historic transfer of wealth that we are witnessing from baby boomers to millennials, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, and the next generation, which is happening before our eyes. This is the biggest, most substantial, most significant transfer of wealth we are likely to witness in at least my lifetime. And why is that relevant to impact investing? I think the consciousness that we have to address this existential challenge to the humankind and the biosphere is much more enhanced in the next generation than certainly in my generation. And therefore, it reinforces the first point I mentioned, the point about general awareness, which is global. The third trend is the development of new technologies, which enable us to address and combat the challenges we face, in particular climate change, and to wean us off our addiction to fossil fuel. I think it's fair to say that since the discovery of the first oil well in Pennsylvania 170 years ago, the world has been addicted to the consumption of fossil fuel, principally oil and gas and precipitates. Now, we are moving beyond a fossil fuel age. Everybody knows that already. In particular, the oil-producing economies, such as Saudi Arabia, such as the United States, to name the two principal carbon fuel producing and exporting countries in the world today. The awareness that we have to move beyond that is compelling. And we have new technologies to address this transition, particularly at our very doorstep. So the biggest electric vehicle market in the world is China. That position is dominant, and that gives huge opportunities to Hong Kong as the single global financial market, which serves not just China, but the whole of East and Southeast Asia, and arguably the multiple time zones that straddle all the way from Tokyo to Mumbai and beyond. So I'm just giving one example because time does not allow me to run through the whole catalog of technological and scientific changes, but they include notions such as carbon capture and so on. The fourth trend are new markets, which again give us new investment opportunities. So I'll give just one example. The carbon trading market, which is highly developed in the European Union, and China is fast catching up because China is currently the principal carbon producing economy in the world, and therefore it needs to balance that output. And that balancing comes from not just domestic carbon markets in China, which there are 8, starting 15 years ago or 16 years ago in Tianjin in 2008, followed by Beijing 2009, Shanghai 2010, etc. Today, there are 8 different carbon markets in China. They need to interface with the most developed carbon market in the world, that's the European Union. And the solution that is obvious is to do it via Hong Kong. So that's a dialogue we've been having with our Chinese counterparts, as well as with our interlocutors in the European Union. So this is an example of a new market which gives new investment opportunities. So all the 4 trends I've mentioned, growing global awareness, particularly among the young generation. Secondly, the transfer of wealth to next gen. Thirdly, advance of new technologies. And finally, development of new markets are all forces for a virtuous circle. And that's why FSDC has focused on this. This is a matter very close to my own heart. So I raised this with my partners and colleagues in the FSDC as an area of study we should focus on. So I hope that briefly answers your question, Rocky.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Indeed, I think the 4 key points that you highlighted, the general awareness, transfer of wealth, technology, and new markets are really the key reasons why we want to capture this as one of our growth engines here in Hong Kong. And moving on to the next question is really about investment and the experience of Eric. Eric, having this capital led by yourself is really a pioneer in impact investing here. To us, and like both King and I, my executive director, Dr. King Ao and I, were amazed by how you guys were investing in this throughout the years. I remember the first time that we listened to you, we were astonished really about 4 years ago of how the sort of investments that you guys are devoting your resources to. Perhaps you can share with us the current state of impact investing in Hong Kong, some of the highlight events that you have attended personally, and what are some other emerging economies that you consider Hong Kong should capture?
Actually, first of all, I can say that Asia in general, only Hong Kong, is a little bit behind, particularly Europe and US. And we've been working with a lot of federal offices in Europe and US. They are very active in deploying the capital wisely to create more impact to the world. But I think Hong Kong is catching up very nicely, driven by FSDC in Hong Kong. And for example, FSDC hosted a big conference last year with Jing, the Global Impact Investment Network, and attracted a lot of good speakers and audience. And Voeux for Good is initiated by the Hong Kong government for a lot of family offices worldwide. And I also helped invite some European families from Italy and Germany to come. And they're very interested in the landscape in Hong Kong because as investors, when we look at a beginning of the market, they will see opportunities. And also, I think FSDC is also driving another big conference next year with a pretty big organization. And I think Hong Kong will become, as we aim to become like a hub for impact investing and philanthropy. And for Asian, I think Japan, they are also trying to transform the impact investing landscape because in the past, impact investing in Japan only means philanthropy. So there was no concept in making money out of philanthropic projects. And now I think in Japan, a lot of impact investors are realizing they should also focus on both financial return and impact return in order to keep generating funding and momentum in the impact investment space. So I think Hong Kong could become a very good leader in this space in Asia. Because I think we get a lot of mainland family offices in Hong Kong, and the next gen in these mainland family offices really care about the environment, care about the world, and also the society. So I think this is forming another driving force in Hong Kong to drive impact investing forward together with a lot of public and private initiatives.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much, Eric. And you highlighted some of the initiatives that we have seen here in Hong Kong, but also examples that we have seen, among family offices and your partners and friends in Europe and other parts of Asia. Now, Loretta, I think the next question is really about how your the daily conversation that you would have with your clients and network. Investors can obviously choose from an array of investment strategies to deal with a sustainable agenda. But why would they want to pick impact investing other than, say, ESG investing, venture philanthropy, social entrepreneurship, and the likes? And then, after that, I think we also have an expert in Jean to talk about philanthropy. But Loretta, I would like you to share with us some of the conversations that you had with your clients.
Sure. So thank you. I guess when we talk about investment, everybody would be trying to think about returns. So let me start by differentiating whether there's return or no return. So for ESG and impact investment, it is with return. So let's try to be clear about with or without return. So these two would have return and with different impacts. The other two would be without return. So philanthropy and say other social entrepreneurship to the extent could be charity. So hopefully this is one point that is easily distinguishable between the different types of investments. And then now down to impact versus ESG. So impact, they make an explicit objective in terms of what impact they want to make. So it is very measurable and you know what they are trying to achieve. So this is very important about the impact investment part. For ESG, I think what we tend to go on through the journey, it's partly is a risk management purpose. If you look into an investment, you want it to be sustainable. And then you would also embed all the different ESG investment as part of your selection process. So for example, if you want to invest in a company that includes diversity in the board, it's part of the decision-making process. So these are the 2 points I want to highlight and how you can differentiate between different types of investments. The other thing about impact investment is they would carry certain characteristics. So I would try to name 5. So hopefully that's 5 pointers that would help you to differentiate impact investment. So number 1, intentionality. So when you talk about impact investments, you have an intention, you have an impact you want to make. So you have an objective. And then number 2, other than financial return, there would be social return. So for example, you want to create employment, you measure the number of employment you created. So there you go, you have a social return as well. Number 3, you might often come across theory of change. That means whether you do this investment, cost and impact or not, there will be a theory of change in the process. Impact measurement is very important. I keep mentioning you have an objective and then you try to measure it. Transparency and accountability is very important in impact investments. So people know your intention, how you measure it, monitor it, and also reporting on it. And there is also a wide range of assets that you could invest in. So bonds, private investments, and even secondary markets. You can always pick a range of assets that you could invest in.
Oh, thank you very much, Loretta. I think you highlighted the key points now. Impact investing is ask a quest for return, specificity, or I'll use another word, being specific. And then the 5 characteristics that you mentioned. Now, I would like to ask really the expert of philanthropy, Jean. When we launched the other paper, or when we start looking into the matters of philanthropy, whenever we talk to some foundations, they ask me and King a question: have you talked to Jean Song? So that was really why we need to ask you about this. Even though your capacity of advising clients would primarily be about philanthropy, and then how do you see or your clients see impact investing, especially if they are trying to what they used to be dealing with the traditional form of investing, and how would you guide them through the process of transitioning from traditional to perhaps impact investing?
It's actually a very interesting question, because if we think of the traditional charitable donation, it's more like writing a check, putting my name on the door, and we walk away. But I think today we really live in a very complicated world. We have rising costs, income inequality, we have resource instability, and we also have climate change, and we have no idea where that's going to lead us. So when we look at investors, community investors or financial investors, what is their objective? Their objective is really twofold. They have 2 goals. They need to generate a financial return, but at the same time, it needs to align with their values. So you also see families thinking about transitioning their values from one generation to another, to their business, and also to the community. So I often look at the words, all the acronyms, ESG, impact investing, et cetera, and I think what we really mean is how can we guide investors to invest for impact, for impact in responsible and sustainable businesses. What are responsible businesses? What are sustainable businesses? Responsible businesses can simply be a mom and pop shop. Instead of having plastic single use, they could turn to alternate packaging. So that's also good for the environment, and it's also good, for the consumer. So we're looking at businesses, responsible, sustainable businesses, responding to your personal interest, your passion, your priority, and how do they actually come up with resonating with that passion, resonating with humanitarian as well as environmental concerns. So if we look at ultra high net worth individuals, charities, endowments, foundations, etc., they also have a growing curiosity. What should we be doing next? Should we be just, writing a check, giving philanthropic investments? They're probably the riskiest investments that you could ever give away, because there's no guarantee. But if you look at investing for impact, there is a business lens, and thereby you are looking at a double line return. You're looking to generate a return as well generating a response to humanity and not the environment. So I think at the moment we're seeing more and more, as Daniel referred to the baby boomers, but also the next generation is finding those responsible and sustainable business that we could invest in for the longer term. And in the longer term, it's also about one's behavior, moral behavior, and it's also your value in the company that you're investing in, the stakeholders, the shareholders. In the long term, are you a responsible, sustainable business that responds to humanitarian as well as environmental concerns?
Thank you very much, Gina. I think that's very powerful. The double line return and the the alignment of interest or investment objective with the value, be it the family value or be it the personal value. And that ties us to the next question for Daniel. Daniel, you, King, and I always talk about how important it is to work on some of the sustainable development goals. And that's why, we went to COP28 last year. We are planning to do it together with our friends, the Friends of the Earth, to Baku later this year. Perhaps you can elaborate why, SDG is so important to impact investing, and how these SDGs, impact investing, intersect with the broader work of sustainability and finance.
That's a great question, Rocky. I think the Sustainable Development Goals developed by the UN and agreed to by the 196 sovereign states, which form the United Nations, is arguably the most useful strategic framework for thinking about and for implementing our role as good, responsible social citizens. And here, of course, I echo the words of Jean, that for impact investing, we want to do well, but we also want to do good. And it's possible to do both. And in fact, it's much easier to do both today than it was, let's say, 20, 30 years ago, when there was less developed technology, there were less innovative markets, and so on and so forth, and less, of course, awareness, as we mentioned earlier. So the UN was very successful in promulgating the Millennium Development Goals in the year 2000, which ran for 15 years until 2015. And today we're in the middle of the next phase, which is implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. The difference being sustainable. Because clearly we live in one planet. It's irreplaceable, as we mentioned earlier in this webinar. We are not going to find it easy to live on Mars or the Moon or Venus. I mean, these are pipe dreams, which will not happen, I don't think, in my lifetime, and will have no particular resonance with most of the 99.9% of people who live on planet Earth. Therefore, how do we make this work to ensure the survivability of humankind? I mean, that's the ultimate and most noble goal of the SDGs. Now, I'm not saying SDGs are perfect. I'm sure many people can think of ways to improve that, but they have received the consensus, as I said, of the 196 sovereign states of the United Nations. So that is no mean feat, and we should not overlook how difficult it is to achieve agreement and consensus amongst the 8 billion people that live on this planet of ours. Now, Rocky mentioned significantly that we, believing in the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, we went to attend and participate last year at COP 27. This is the Conference of the Parties on Climate Change. And for the very first time, Hong Kong, through the delegation from FSDC, which I led, were given blue passes. What does that mean? It means that we were given official status and we were given an official platform to explain, promulgate, and advocate Hong Kong's view on combating climate change and providing solutions. This has never happened before. Hong Kong is not a sovereign state, and therefore it is not a member of the United Nations. And for 27 years, or you could say ever since the founding of the United Nations, back in 1945, Hong Kong had no particular status, in fact, no status. But with the blessing of the central government and with massive strategic assistance from Friends of the Earth, particularly Hong Kong chapter, we were given blue passes. This is a breakthrough. And this is a breakthrough which happened when Hong Kong is a special administrative region of China. Let us not forget that achievement. This is, to my mind, one of the most signal achievements of Hong Kong since 1997. We were given official status to the UN, and that will continue this year at Baku, which is the site of COP 29, and long may that continue. My understanding is that we will build on this momentum and continue to punch above our weight and have a major official presence at future COPs that will take place annually. And that's why the SDGs are relevant, are important, and I think it's very difficult to think of an alternative to SDGs. I'm sure for many issues that we address, there are many different contentions and many different points of view. That is natural. Human beings are human beings. But if we want to work together, pull on the same side of the rope, it is very important that we agree on an intellectual framework. That intellectual framework is the SDGs. And
quite a bit of a range of ideas from why SDG would be relevant to our work and how Hong Kong can play a role, etc. But there was one thing that I would perhaps disagree, and that is perhaps Eric to say it. That's about space. I know for a fact that Eric has through Happiness Capital has made quite a bit of investment, and that's about reaching living in perhaps in the space, or it's about the cleanliness of our space. So the next question is to Eric, who whom I want to ask about his investment philosophy and experience. I guess, by now we know what impact investing is, why it is relevant, why it is important. But as an actual practitioner who invests with a purpose and put your money where your words are, I wonder, how you can actually make sure that your values are truly aligned with the investment that you are making. So that is the principal question. But I would also love to hear your space-related investing too.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, and very good question. Let's go back to the mission, right? The value. We are a global venture capital firm, part of the Lee Kum Kee Group. So as you know, Lee Kum Kee has been a family business for 136 years. We're global, and we keep diversifying as well. And about 8 years ago, we started using happiness as a theme to create a lot of new initiatives inside the group, and also supporting the Hong Kong society and also around the globe. The mission statement of Lee Kum Kee Group actually drives our value too. So we said we strive to be the most trusted enterprise, to make a healthier and happier world beyond 1,000 years. So we are long term, and we want people to be healthy and happy. So Happiness Capital was born in 2017. So we've been investing for the last 8 years, and we have been executing or realizing the value system of the Kum Kee family through our investment thesis. When we started, we first of all asked ourselves what's happiness and how to measure happiness that we're creating. So the family actually made a donation to the Harvard School of Public Health 9 years ago to create the center, or the Lee Kum Sheung Center for Health and Happiness. So we study happiness, what makes people happy, and how to measure happiness. Based on the research results, we work with 3 global impact investment experts to create a new framework called the Happiness Return. And it's now published by the Stanford Social Innovation Review, and also the Journal of Impact and ESG Investing in the US. And Hong Kong UST Business School just wrote a case study about us, and it's also published by Harvard Business Review. And so because we're doing it in a very different way in creating both financial return and happiness return for the whole world. And in a nutshell, what we do with happiness return is we identify all the stakeholders for every portfolio companies that we invest in. And then for every stakeholder, we look at the condition for happiness, which is based on the OECD Better Life Index. So we didn't create something up. So we're still using the global and the UN standards. This is about education, housing, health, work-life balance, and also the experience of happiness, which is more about the emotional state of well-being. So it's based on the PERMA model, which measures things like positive emotion, engagement, relationship, meaning, and achievement. And then we aggregate all the stakeholder scores together to become a score for portfolio companies. And if we didn't do, or we didn't pick the right company, the company could have a score that is less than 1. That means they're making more people unhappy than happy. Because everything is about net. The whole world, when you do something, some people may be happy, some people may be unhappy. So we just aim to make more people happy, and also happier than the people that we may make them unhappy. And then we aggregate all the stakeholder scores in your portfolio score. And so far, it's actually done by third party. There's a social impact measurement company in the US. Help us to survey our portfolio companies every year. And our score is 1.3. That means that we're creating 30% more happiness for all the stakeholders from our portfolio companies, and with the capital that we deployed so far with all the portfolio companies. And you may ask me, just like Jin said, right, double line. And what's the other line? The other line is financial return. A lot of people have the perception that impact investment have to sacrifice in financial return, but actually we're trying to prove that it's otherwise. So so far all our exits are about 100% IRR, which is quite brilliant. Just because I think the whole new generation of the world and the new generation of consumers, they really support the idea of sustainability, and they also understand about some of the goals of the SDG. So consumers actually are driving this force, and then the family offices are driving the funds. The family offices or the LPs are driving the funds. So the GPs have to accept the reality, and they have to really join the force and also try to move all the investment towards sustainability as well. So I can cite some examples. We have a company in Turkey called Voeux, and they use bacteria to grow leather. And they are as thin as lamb skin, as strong as lamb skin, actually 4 times stronger. And you don't need to do any tanning process. You use very little water to create a whole piece of leather within 7 days. And they found a very good partner called Balenciaga to launch it in the Paris Fashion Week last year. And 1 week they achieved 100 million likes. Almost impossible to do it with any other brands.
Congratulations.
And they launched it with Balenciaga, and it cost almost like 100,000 Hong Kong per piece, and it was sold out. Because we were actually trying to buy a piece to give it to the King of Bhutan when we had our annual event there 2 weeks ago. And we asked the Balenciaga in Hong Kong, it sold out. Japan sold out. There was only 1 left in Shanghai and 1 left in London. So we bought 2. Just 1 for the King, 1 for the Queen. And also another company that I think Rocky always mentioned about space. In fact, we have been investing in space tech the last few years because we think when we look at the environment, it's not only the Earth, the space is also part of our environment as well. And if you imagine, without satellites, we don't have emergency services, we don't have weather forecast, we cannot monitor the agriculture yield, and so a lot of companies would be lost in terms of like predicting all the agriculture output as well. So protecting our satellite, operating safely in the space is very important. Just what we call the subject area is space sustainability, and we invest in companies that, for example, like providing like a Google map and actually look at space in real time, and then they can actually identify all the debris in space. There's a lot of satellites, when they fail, they just like float around, and when you hit the operating satellite, then the satellite's gone. So and particularly now we are doing a lot of low orbit satellite services and planting, and like in the future all the autonomous cars will be also dependent on satellites. So it will be quite important to ensure that before we did what we did to oceans, we must do it right for the space. So we encourage people to actually invest more in protecting our space and don't let it become another debris pool for the Earth. And at the same time, we also have a company that can clear the debris in space, so they can actually grab the debris and throw it back to Earth and burn them, or actually they can now recharge or refuel a satellite that is going out of operation, because every satellite is a lifetime of our technology. So if you can extend it for 5 to 10 years, that means we have to shoot less satellite to the space as well, so create less debris, and also extend the life of all these equipment out in space. So these are the examples that we have been investing in, that we do really well. And lately we just closed another, since Daniel also mentioned about energy and carbon. We just closed a deal today to back a company that actually uses algae to produce biofuel. And algae in the past is very difficult to process because you have to put the algae out and then you process it. But actually they change the DNA of algae so that the algae actually secretes this biofuel as a process. So we can actually just steam the biofuel in the surface of water. Then you become like the biofuel for aircraft and for other purposes, and can definitely decrease the carbon emission and also the clean energy use.
Thank you so much, Eric. I'm always amazed, and I'm particularly thankful that my wife is not watching today. Otherwise, I would have to bring a bang for the Balenciaga. And also, luckily, it is sold out, so I don't have to worry too much about it. But you talk about bacteria, you talk about space, you talk about biofuel, and you also highlighted how things impact can be measured. Our colleagues who are dialing in online, Robert particularly asked quite a bit about the measurement, and so I guess the happiness return is a way to address it. But if people are not aware of happiness return yet, they should be. But otherwise, I think Loretta would have quite a bit of experience in explaining to her clients of how impact should be measured. So, question is, what are some challenges and what are some models that your clients can adopt in measuring such impacts?
I feel like I'm going to talk very dry after Eric's story. But there are ways to do it. So maybe let's just go for the popular ones. I think in our discussion today, SDG is a very good framework. The reason being is, number one, it is a national goal to start with. So the countries that have signed up, they all agree these are important things or important issues. And then when you look at the framework, you feel like, oh, there are like 17 colorful boxes. What should I be doing? But once you click into the website, actually there are targets and then indicators as well. So that gets you to the next level of assessing whether your investment should go to, say, number one, SDG goal number one, no poverty, or other goals. So there is a framework for you to follow and guideline. The other thing that is very popular in the gene survey, it's the tool. So Iris Plus is a tool that is also very helpful. So I think all of us like number and quantification. So what Iris Plus would help you is, if you go into their website, again, these are all open sources, free to use, you go into SDG, and then you'll be seeing many indicators on how to quantify different say, for example, if you're a no poverty SDG goal number one, and you want to measure the number of caregivers in a certain investments, for example. So that gives you an idea what sort of quantification you can make towards a SDG goal. So I feel like everyone who want to start a process could take reference to SDG goal and then Iris Plus as well. In our report, you'll be seeing like other frameworks and tools as well, but these are the two popular ones. And the reason why we should start with popular ones is the universal language. So when you speak with your investors, you speak with other people, there are something as a common ground for people to understand the investment strategies as well.
Fantastic, Loretta. I think, besides what you mentioned, I think, in our paper, we also highlighted the success of two local, fantastic, locally run, but globally operated business. So I guess, happiness measurement should also be considered by your clients too. Jean, I understand that, obviously we have a lot of global best practice. And in other parts of the world, we also see quite a bit of deals, impact investors and such. So with your global experience, perhaps you can enlighten us in how Hong Kong can perhaps build a more conducive ecosystem for impact investment to flourish. How can we bring more deals and investors to this place? And, are we ready to be a hub, so to speak?
Well, first of all, I want to go back to the happiness capital. I think obviously Lee Tung has completed and excelled in generating returns and also at the same time transfer the value and also help the local population to see the value of your product. By the way, I am a great user of Lee Tung. Anything I cook has something Lee Tung in it. I think this SDGs, it's a very smart goals. When you look at the 16th and the 17th, it's about collaboration. talking about collaboration and partnership is the easiest words. We can always say that. But when we look at these other 16 goals, they actually fall into, I think, 4 specific themes. It goes through the education, humanitarian, and the environment, as well as social economic divide. When we see the divide, that's when we can see, that there's a lot of income disparity. And there's also talks within the community that there are no jobs, even though there's lots of private families coming in, there's capital coming in, but we're not seeing any jobs. So the SDGs can actually help us to look at what's close to Hong Kong. And we should be really just thinking about Hong Kong. Asia, yes, it's important, but we have also been known as the most generous city for a long time. But we don't really talk about it, but maybe we should start talking about it. We also have a very, very, they say fair, government with tax, et cetera, that you can come in and be an entrepreneur, you can come in and start your own enterprise. And that's why I think we should look at the scale. Very often, philanthropists will say, oh, I'm going to do this and it's going to give me scale. I'm going to invest this, it's going to give me scale. I kind of like to say, really? Not really. The only people that can really give us scale is the public sector. And I think this is where financial services, your impact group, Invest Hong Kong, that's where they can help us to create a role and help us to partner. We have been the best champion of PPPs, public-private partnerships. So in the old days, maybe someone wants to build a school and the government said, there's a piece of land, go and develop it, and there's the school or a clinic. What we didn't see all those years ago is how do we create the software that goes into the school? How do we look at the vocational training for the teachers, the principals or the clinicians, etc. We have got technology today. We have got science, and we have got people who want to invest in the software, in the vibrancy to build our city where we live and work. I feel that we are really at the cusp of doing great things because we know where the problems is. We know some of the social issues. You spoke about social housing earlier. We speak about health. We speak about the environment. All those is going to impact our citizens, our future. Young investors for impact gets that. And they also need to create companies in the future that has that conscionable business practice. So in the future, I feel that we shouldn't just, I hear so often people say, Hong Kong, we're falling behind. We're not falling behind. We're actually doing the solid things, the foundation that we should be all working on. We should be supporting each other in our natural resources, in our natural can-do behavior. We've done that. Small businesses, the backbone of our society, the mom and pop shop, they need the scale. They need the capital. And I think this is where impact investing will come in. No one invests money if there's no impact. So if we see a tatang or we see an egg tart shop, that all of a sudden there's 20, branches all over our city, those are the businesses, responsible businesses, sustainable businesses that we should be continuing in Hong Kong. And I do believe that this paper that you're writing, the Financial Services Council paper, it's a wake up. It's a wake up to say to us, let's go and capture the positive things that we're doing. We've got happiness. And I was saying to Eric earlier on, we should all be happy. But happy is the hardest thing to achieve because when we start to think, complain about that. But when we look at what a lucky place we live in, we're almost free of crime. We can get jobs if you wanted to. There's education. There's potential for you to start a social enterprise. There's potential for you to start an enterprise, a business, responsible business. We should power ahead and look at the humanitarian and the environmental concerns that's close to us. How do we realize that happiness? How do we work together and, make Hong Kong great? We've always been great. This is the time to talk about.
Thank you very much, Jean, for the very passionate summary of what we should be doing. I'm sure we will be doing quite a bit. But my last question, really, I know that I'm conscious of time, but my last question is really for our Vice Chairman, who not only is a barrister himself, but he used to be in the public sector. So, and his wealth of experience with our international friends and partners would make him the right party to guide us through what else perhaps Hong Kong should be doing in order to equip our, say, public sector bodies or professional service providers to be up to speed for the adoption of impact investing as a mainstream vehicle for us to achieve relevant goals.
I think the relationship between the investor and the professional service provider, as well as the investor and the government, is synergistic. In other words, the investor being conscious of the imperative of doing good, being a responsible global citizen, as well as doing well, would drive that dynamic with the professional service provider, as well as with the regulator and the government, which provides the environment. So the professional service provider, whether it's a financial service provider or a legal service provider or an accountant or a consultant, would help facilitate and enable the investor to reach his particular goal. That's hugely important. I think the professional service provider would identify areas of investment that the investor might be interested in. That's the job of the professional service provider. So the professional service provider has to be educated, has to be aware, has to engage with the passion and the intentions of the investor. And I'm very confident that can be done because as the investor evolves with time, and we've already talked about how with growing global awareness, with wealth transfer from the baby boomers to next gen, that awareness is reinforced. And the same with professional service providers, which come obviously also from next gen. They're moving from the baby boomers to that particular generation. So that's a virtuous circle. The government also, through the civil service and the policymakers, are moving towards that generation. And they clearly subscribe to that zeitgeist or that consciousness of society. So I think everybody's pulling on the same side of the rope. And I think Hong Kong is well placed. I want to echo what Jean has said earlier, that we are actually a major philanthropic, global philanthropic center. We definitely are not falling behind. In fact, we lead the pack. I'll give you just one example. In the early 2000s, the United Nations Development Program wanted to build a PPP, a public-private partnership, and they chose two places. In 2003, they established a PPP with Washington, D.C. And in 2005, they established one in Hong Kong known as the Peace and Development Foundation, which I chaired for 18 years until stepping down late last year. I stayed way too long, but it illustrates that the perception of the United Nations Development Program is that Hong Kong is a major philanthropic hub. And we rank alongside Washington DC as being the most generous of societies. That the Peace Development Foundation not just survives, but it thrives today. And we have a mission to send young people to work in UN. They come back to Hong Kong and they contribute to our society too. And we send people to mainland China, we send people to Geneva, to New York, and so on. So I think that spirit of doing good and doing well, which is part of our DNA, will long survive, at least this particular webinar. But I think we need to recognize our strengths, and we need to play to our strengths. I'm sure we will do that.
Great to have very passionate professionals, leaders, thought leaders, and also professional service firm. Loretta will surely agree with you in identifying the right opportunities. But like doing this research process, we thank all the working group members for being a part of this and giving us very wise advice. And look forward to further engagement with not only our working group members, but other friends who joined us today. And for those of you who can't join us, I hope you guys are watching the replay of this webinar. But last but not least, please stay for a polling session that my colleague will be pulling up shortly. Give us some feedback, and look forward to having you again in the next launch of paper, hopefully within the next couple of months. Thank you.